The NFL trade deadline passed today. We're going to go over the AFC teams in this video and give a grade for every single team that did make a trade and also every team that did not make a trade. Because I do believe that standing pat and not making a move at the deadline deserves a grade. Some teams should have, some teams should not have. So let's go ahead and hop into it. First up, we're going to be talking about the Patriots. Now, I thought the Patriots were actually going to be buyers here, not sellers, but they move off of Keon White, Jalen Polk, and Kyle Duggar, three guys that really were not playing a part of meaningful rotational minutes for the Pats. I mean, yes, they provided some depth, but look at what the Patriots got back. 3 6th-round picks, which, doesn't sound like a lot, but number one, 6th-round picks can turn into stars. And who better to ask than the Patriots themselves, with Tom Brady being the greatest 6th-round draft pick of all time. But not only that, but these picks can also be used to package, to upgrade, and get into the 5th, the 4th, and even the 3rd round of the NFL draft. So I liked what the Patriots did. I just maybe thought that they should have bought something, not really something that I could think of off the top of my head outside of course, the offensive line, which Drake May has been playing at an MVP level, and that offensive line has not been doing great. I thought Will Campbell has started to produce better as a left tackle, but the interior part of that offensive line has not been great. The Patriots really haven't been running the ball at an elite level, so I wanted them to buy an offensive lineman, kind of like a Trevor Penning, maybe put him at guard. That's a little tougher to do, but I digress. I think the Patriots should have bought. I would give them a B minus because they were able to sell off some of their assets that they just quite frankly weren't using for meaningful draft picks that could end up being packaged for something better. Now, the splash of the entire trade deadline, the New York Jets were selling the house. This was a fire sale, to say the least. Now, let's talk about what they brought in first. They got Jarvis Brownlee from the Titans. I thought that was an interesting play. It seems like they like the secondary that they have, and they were already thinking about the big trade that they were going to make later on in the trade deadline. So Jarvis Brownlee Jr., I thought that was a solid pickup. John Mechie as well, underutilized with Philadelphia. Of course, had the, I believe, leukemia scare early on in his NFL career. Has not been able to pan out as a prospect as of yet, but I'm hopeful for him as an Alabama fan and a former guy, or a guy who formerly covered him at Alabama. I'm hoping the best for him. I think that the Jets have plenty of opportunities at the wide receiver position. So this could be a spot where John Mechie Jr. or John Mechie the third could go in and shine. Now, let's continue and talk about what else they've got. They got a 6th-round pick from the Eagles. This was a part of a pick swap, right? John Mechie and a 6th-round pick for, I believe, a 7th-round pick and something else to the Eagles. But either way, this was a good trade for the Jets. Then let's talk about 2 first-round picks. Let's go ahead and package both these deals together, actually. 3 first-round picks and a 2nd-round pick for Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams. A phenomenal trade for the Jets. Oh, by the way, Michael Carter was the DB that gets traded to Philadelphia for that 6th-round pick. But let's continue on this blockbuster, or pair of blockbusters, actually. 3 first-round picks and a 2nd-round pick going to the Colts and Cowboys, trading away Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams. I actually love these trades for the Jets. Yes, their season is screwed. Their future is screwed. But in 3 or 4 years, this will be a much better Jets team. We're going to talk about the Jets running the NFL draft for the next 2 or 3 seasons. I think they're stacked with picks. They're devoid of real talent on either side of the ball outside of Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, and maybe McDonald, the edge rusher. I can't really think of any other Jets that I would put at an all-pro, Pro Bowl type level. So this Jets team is going to be bad, really bad for the next season or 2. But those draft picks that they pick up from the Colts and from the Cowboys, along with their own draft picks, are going to end up stacking them with premium talent going forward. And that timeline will line up. And maybe, just maybe, the Jets could finally get their franchise quarterback. So I was super happy to see them make this trade, or this pair of trades. So I'm going to give them an A. I know a lot of Jets fans are like, damn it, we're in misery. We've always been in misery, but there is there is light at the end of the tunnel, New York Jets fans. It's just a long tunnel. We're talking, 15 miles, and we got New York City traffic in front of you. So it'll be some time, but the Jets making the right moves here, selling off their assets instead of just doubling down and banging their head against the wall once again. Let's move on. Miami Dolphins, it's clear they're not making the playoffs. The front office fires their GM, Chris Greer, who's been there for whoa, 20, 25 years, I think. I mean, he's been there for forever in some form of capacity. He's been the GM for quite some time now. He's put together a few really good rosters, but injuries to players like Tua have played such a dramatic effect, or have had such a dramatic effect on the outcome of these Dolphin seasons. And the rumors were that he was refusing to sell off assets here at the end of the trade deadline. And the ownership did not like that. They see the writing on the wall, and they know the Dolphins are not making it. So they wanted to sell off some assets. They traded away Jalen Phillips for a third round pick and a guy who hasn't really produced in the last couple of seasons. In my opinion, it was a good move. They traded to the Eagles, which, my God, Howie Roseman gets another good edge rusher for cheap. I digress. We'll talk about the Dolphins specifically right here. I thought it was a good trade for Miami. They get a third round pick in this year's draft. It could be a decent pick, to say the least. The Dolphins have had some luck, or not even some luck. They've had some skill in drafting good players. Now, their front office is going to be changing, so that could actually make a difference, but we'll see. I think they put that third round pick to good use and plan for the future here. Look out for the Dolphins to be selling off more of their assets in the offseason. I don't believe they're going to try to run it back with Mike McDaniel and two. I think that era is over with. Next up, we got the AFC North. The Baltimore Ravens were kind of buyers, I think. They just kind of swapped around some positions. So they trade away Jair Alexander, who they signed late in the offseason, coming off of his release from Green Bay. He never really gelled well there. I thought that was like a courtesy tap or a hat flip to Lamar Jackson, gets his former teammate from Louisville. But they were able to flip him to Philadelphia, which, once again, Philadelphia getting another underutilized player for cheap. Just cannot see the end of this. But they end up getting Aloy Gilman from the Chargers and a fifth round pick as well in exchange for Odafe Owe. I'm sorry, I'm butchering his name. Not great at names, but they flip him for a seventh round pick as well for Gilman, who comes in much needed depth needed in that Ravens secondary. Kyle Hamilton and Marlon Humphrey are really the only two staple names there with the program. So I think they're trying to find some depth there at the safety position. I liked that. They also get Draymond Jones from the Titans. I thought that was a good edge rusher pick. The Titans have been major sellers, and the Ravens get him for fairly cheap, a conditional fifth round pick. Now, if Jones, I believe, gets 2 sacks and the Ravens make the playoffs, which honestly is quite probable, that will turn into a fourth round pick, and that might be too expensive for Jones. So I'm going to give the Ravens a B minus here. I don't necessarily think that they, won the trade deadline, but they definitely made the moves, in my opinion, that were necessary to try to win the North. So I liked what the Ravens were doing here. Meanwhile, the Cincinnati Bengals. What is the direction? Where are they going? They trade for Joe Flacco after Browning, the backup to Joe Burrow, ends up being disappointing, to say the least. They trade for Joe Flacco, and he's done pretty well. I mean, pretty well is an understatement. Joe Flacco has played great football. I mean, he put 42 on the Bears' head this past Sunday. They're trying to compete to get Joe Burrow back to win a playoff game, and Joe Flacco has done his job. But the Logan Wilson trade to the Cowboys was the one that marked today in the trade deadline. I'm so confused by this. He's only 2 years in to a 4-year, $36 million extension. Did not make a lot of sense why they traded him away. I mean, this all has to do with him getting benched a couple weeks ago, right? And he comes out and voices, he's like, I don't know what's going on. Like, this just seems weird. It's not what I thought it was going to be. I don't think it's what the Bengals thought it was going to be. I thought they should have been bigger buyers for this trade deadline, especially if they're trying to win games. Obviously, they're competing in a lot of the games that they're losing. A close loss to the Bears this past weekend. There were some games that they thought that they were just quite frankly going to be able to win, like versus the Jets. I think the Bengals lost that game as well. I'll have to Google that and make sure about that. Let's see. Let me while I'm talking about this. Yeah, they lost 39-38 to the Jets. So just a weird season overall. And quite frankly, it all had to start with Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart not getting the contracts that they were looking for. It's just so strange. The Bengals are just an unbelievably weird organization. I don't know if they're going to fire their coach. I don't know if they're ever going to pay their players when they want to get paid. It just doesn't make a lot of sense what Cincinnati's got going. So I'm going to give them a C minus. I don't think this was a good trade deadline for them. Obviously, that trade for Joe Flacco says one thing, but the trade with Logan Wilson leaving leaving to Dallas says another thing. The Bengals have the worst defense in the league. I thought if you want to compete for a playoff spot, you got to buy some players with draft picks. They just didn't do it. So disappointed to say the least with Cincinnati. Meanwhile, let's talk about the Cleveland Browns. They had some shakeups here. They started Joe Flacco at the beginning of the year. I think the big downgrade for the Browns, or like a bad grade that you would give the Browns, is just their lack of identity on the offensive side of the football, specifically at quarterback. They start Joe Flacco, they trade him away. They draft Dylan Gabriel with a third-round pick. They draft Shador Sanders with a fifth-round pick. Doesn't make a lot of sense here. Shador is yet to see the field. Dylan Gabriel has been middling, I guess. I mean, the Browns don't really have a lot of bright spots, but they trade for Cam Robinson, which I believe it was a sixth-round pick. I thought that was a good deal for them. Cam Robinson is a solid tackle and can be a decent depth for you as well. They also got Tyson Campbell in basically a player swap for Greg Newsome. I think Tyson Campbell has some high upside. This Browns defense has not been the problem. I believe they're a top 10 defense, and yet the Browns have a significant losing record. So there is just a lot of problems in Cleveland, but specifically with the trade deadline, I thought they won, right? They get rid of some of their players that they were a little disappointed in, like Joe Flacco and Greg Newsome, and they bring back some high upside prospects like Tyson Campbell, a fifth-round pick from the Bengals, a sixth-round pick from the Bears. So I was very happy to see them build on some assets going forward. They just must find their quarterback. I cannot believe they traded away Baker Mayfield. Ooh, man, the Cleveland Browns, huh? Browns gonna brown. Here we go. Pittsburgh Steelers, continuing on my AFC North trend. They trade for Kyle Duggar. And now I liked this trade for them. They traded away a sixth-round pick for Kyle Duggar, and a seventh-round pick. So basically just took a downgrade in the draft for 2026, 6 to a 7th, and they got Kyle Duggar for it. I thought that was a good trade. The Steelers' defense has been very disappointing, to say the least. Outside of this past game versus the Colts, they've had multiple 30-point games dropped on them. They're going to have to improve if they want to win a playoff game. The offense, for once, has not been the main source of contention for this Pittsburgh team. So I liked that they went and got Kyle Duggar. I'll give that a B minus. I thought they should have bought a little bit more, specifically with the front seven. Linebackers have been pretty good. The edge rushers have been all right. TJ Watt, he's kind of at the end of the peak of his powers. Maybe you go and get some depth at those positions, but those are just my thoughts. So B minus for Pittsburgh. Now we move into the AFC South, and the team that I'm most disappointed in, the Houston Texans. They trade away Cam Robinson. Obviously, he's been disappointing for the Texans, but here's the thing. The Texans didn't go and trade for anybody else. Your offensive line in Houston is by far the worst in the AFC. And we're talking about the Las Vegas Raiders are also in that conversation. CJ Stroud has taken a beating all season long. Losing Laramie Tunsil a few years ago was the biggest stick in the Houston Texans side. I have to say right now, the Texans should have traded for multiple offensive linemen here. This is a team that could win a playoff game. Why do I know this? Because they've done it in the last 2 years. It makes no sense why you'd be trending away from that. So I was very disappointed with the Texans. I give them my lowest grade of the whole trade deadline, a D minus. Should honestly be an F, but I'll be a little nice because they got a 6th-round pick for Cam Robinson, but a D minus. Very disappointed. Now the Colts. The Colts probably with the biggest splash trade, the most impactful trade of the deadline. They trade 2 first-round picks and Adonai Mitchell for Sauce Gardner. What a trade. What a trade, to say the least. The question is this really a team that can compete for a Super Bowl? I have not thought so. I thought the Colts were going to be a disaster class. I thought they were going to start Anthony Richardson this season, and they were going to be middling, to say the least, if not worse than that, and try to go and find another quarterback in the draft. But Daniel Jones has played out of his mind. Shane Steichen, great coach. Keep him around because he is transforming this Colts offense into something spectacular. Jonathan Taylor, outside of last week, has played at an MVP level. These wide receivers, Michael Pittman, Tyler Warren at tight end. Oh my gosh. Man, the Colts have just been so good this season, but they remind me a lot of the Minnesota Vikings from last year, right? Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones, kind of the same player in terms of disappointing first round pick, goes on to his next team, or maybe even second or third team. In Sam Darnold's case, I believe the Vikings were his fourth team, maybe even fifth, but I digress. They come in, the prospects are low, the outlooks on the seasons are really disappointing, and they come in and shock the world. The Colts at the time, or at this time, have the best record in the AFC, in the league, actually. So going all in right here, 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner. I mean, it could be something that's making magic, and this could be the catalyst to have the Colts compete for an AFC championship. But I just seriously doubt it. I don't know if this is the one. And trading away 2 first-round picks for something that might not get you to a Super Bowl or closer to it just doesn't seem worth it to me. I was saying Sauce Gardner, is he the catalyst for the Indianapolis Colts? I definitely don't think so. I am a believer that quarterbacks have to be special 90 to 95% of the time to get to a Super Bowl. And Daniel Jones, while he has played special this year, is not a special quarterback, in my opinion. He's not somebody with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, down 3, or maybe down 4, you got to go score a touchdown. He can go score you a field goal, but going to score a touchdown 2-minute drill, I just don't believe he's the guy to do it. So that's why I don't think that the Colts were in the right making this move. I give them a C. If they go and win a Super Bowl, it's an A or an A plus, especially if Sauce Gardner plays at a Super Bowl MVP level. So we'll have to wait and see. He's had a little bit of a disappointing season so far this year, but that could just be because he's with the downtrodden Jets. So let's continue and talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. They go out and acquire some major shaker or some major movers in the wide receiver and defensive back units. Greg Newsome, I think, is a higher upside pick or pick up, to where is what I'm trying to say right here. Tyson Campbell is a guy that was playing really well a couple seasons ago, but has not really reached back into that bag since then. And so Greg Newsome comes in to provide some immediate juice. He also has not really been playing at an extremely high level recently, but quite frankly, it just has to do with the fact that he's DB number 2. There's not a lot of eyes on him in Cleveland. Somehow the Jags saw some talent there and decided to flip him out. So the Jags get a 6th-round pick in Greg Newsome. They trade away Tyson Campbell and a 7th-round pick. So it looks like the Browns got just a tidbit less back for Greg Newsome. Meanwhile, they also trade a 4th and 6th-round pick for Jacoby Myers. Now, a lot of this has to do with the Travis Hunter injury. I cannot obviously change my grade for the Jags based off of what I thought of what they drafted. So I think the Jags get a B here. They trade away Tank Bigsby, who apparently was never going to be the starter in Jacksonville. I thought that was interesting, but this doesn't really have a lot to do with the trade deadline. I'm specifically looking at these 2 trades. So I'm going to give the Jags a B here. I think Jacoby Myers is a steal for a 4th and 6th-round pick. He plays at a top 15 level when his usage rate is high. And obviously in Las Vegas, his usage rate just has been in the toilet recently. So very curious to see what goes down in Jacksonville now that they have a clear wide receiver 2. Next up in the AFC South, we have the Tennessee Titans before we get into the AFC West. The Titans, to me, get an A-. They trade away a lot of their aging assets that, quite frankly, are not going to be a part of the future. Jarvis Brownlee, Roger McCreary in the secondary. This Titans defense has been okay so far this year, but it's not getting much better. They're obviously out of the playoff picture. You might as well sell them off. You get a 6th and 5th round pick I thought that was a really good pickup for the Browns. I mean, not for the Browns, for the Titans. And then not to mention they trade away Drummond Jones for a conditional fifth round pick. Like I said, if he gets 2 sacks and the Ravens make the playoffs, that's a fourth round pick. So they got a fourth, fifth, and sixth round pick for some aging assets. Massive upgrade there for your draft stock going into this upcoming draft. I think it's unbelievably important that they stack themselves up with picks. They can make some more splash moves after the season is over with. So I give the Titans an A minus here. I thought this was a really good trade deadline for them. Let's go ahead and talk about the AFC West. There were 2 teams, in my opinion, that made some moves that, in my opinion, were decent. So for starters, Jacoby Myers, the Vegas Raiders, they're out of the playoff picture. Very clear, especially after losing to Jacksonville in close fashion. So selling off an older asset for a team that's trying to move on into the future, I thought was great. And you get a fourth and a sixth round pick back for that rather than just letting him go for nothing, which I thought Jacoby Myers was on the fringe of just getting cut outright. So really good for the Raiders. I give them a B plus at the trade deadline. And then next, we've got the Chargers, the last team that made a move in the AFC. They trade for Trevor Penning. Now, all of this has to do to the fact that Joe Alt is out for the rest of the season, most likely. Rashawn Slater is also out for the rest of the season with a torn pectoral muscle. So Trevor Penning comes in. He's going to have to fill in that tackle depth. It's clear that they need it. They're still trying to make it to the playoffs. I think that they can. They have a major leg up in terms of getting multiple division wins early on in the season. And then they try to go get some more edge rushing help. Now, Joey Bosa has been missed dearly, in my opinion, in Los Angeles. The Chargers have not looked the same in terms of trying to get to the passer. Khalil Mack is having a bit of a resurgence, but they needed a little bit of help. So they go to the Ravens for that, get another edge rusher, and trade away. I think it was a 6th-round pick. Or no, it was a 5th-round pick in Gilman, which Gilman was, I don't believe, a starter for the Chargers. He was more of a rotational piece. So I love this trade for the Chargers. I give them a B. I thought they should have been bigger buyers with the offensive line. So now let's talk about the 3 teams that I thought who didn't make a move, whether or not I thought it was fine that they didn't. It was the Chiefs, Bills, and Broncos. All of these teams are ready for the next step, which is getting back to the Super Bowl if you're the Chiefs, or making the move to go to the Super Bowl if you're the Bills or the Broncos. Now, would I have liked it if the Bills were the ones trading for Jacoby Myers rather than the Jaguars? Absolutely. But it must not have made sense in terms of salary cap and trading away assets. I understand it. So I'm fine with the Chiefs, Bills, and Broncos not making a move. The one team that I want to really harp on that should have traded for immediate talent, not for assets, but for players. The Houston Texans, I'll say it again, they get a D minus, almost an F. You got to give CJ Stroud some protection. The wide receiver core is stacked with talent. Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, Dalton Schultz. There's plenty of talent there. The running back core is not bad. I like Woody Marks a lot. Nick Chubb is a solid vet. The defense is second or third best in the league. There's just no excuses here. If you just have a better offensive line, you're an AFC championship contender if you're Houston. So very disappointing to say the least. But that, quite frankly, is going to do it for my AFC trade deadline grades. Be sure to go and find my NFC trade deadline grades because they're going to be out soon. I think that overall, the winner of the trade deadline was the New York Jets. There are some other debatable teams like the Eagles and maybe the Rams, but the Jets got the most assets, so that's why I got to make them the winner. Be sure to tune in for my NFC trade deadline projections and grades. That being said, thank you guys all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.